Airport employees of Reddit, what is the strangest, funniest, scariest thing that happened at your airport? I was at the airport one day, waiting for my girlfriend to come pick me after my flight. She was about 20 minutes away, so I sat down by a window ledge to read it, obviously, and like normal there were various airport employees, security people, passengers, etc. wandering around. After about 5 minutes, I notice a couple cops with a dog eyeing me up. They go to walk by, and all of a sudden the dog gets really close to me and then sit down. The cops give me an intense look, and reach under the ledge where I was sitting. All of a sudden, they pull out a bag with a few grams of weed in it. This is not my weed, and I start freaking out internally, like any normal person. One of the cops goes, "What's this all about?" Then, the other cop bursts out laughing, and explains that they are doing canine training, and I happened to sit down right over the exact spot they had previously hidden the bag of weed for the dog to find. The cops were laughing so hard they had to take a couple-minute break from their training, and, after my blood pressure kinda returned to normal, I thought it was pretty funny too. Edit, I should have mentioned I had at least 300 of window ledge to choose where to sit, and I happened to pick that exact spot. Pittsburgh International, 3 a.m. or so several years ago. Watched an older woman tumble down the up escalator. Every time she flipped over she yelled, "I'm okay," like Filbert from Rocco's Modern Life. Flop, I'm okay, flop, I'm okay, flop, I'm okay rolled in place for maybe a minute before someone shut the thing off. Airports employ falconers. The birds are used to keep other birds away from aircraft, because a bird in an engine can really mess up someone's day. So this falconer had come into the airport with his bird to grab a cup of coffee. He decided to try to impress some ladies by taking the hawk's hood off and doing a little demonstration. What he failed to notice was the starlings resting outside on a steel beam. Hawk flew after starlings, smoked the glass and broke its neck. Thousands of dollars worth of highly trained bird, gone. My mom worked for British Airways for years, dealing with special freight cases for import/export. Much of this freight was offloaded and put in a holding warehouse for customers to collect. It wasn't your typical suitcases and luggage of traveling passengers. One shipment came in from Africa, a large wooden crate that didn't actually weigh very much. Her client came in, opened the crate to check the contents and immediately became hugely irate to the warehouse staff. He barges into her office holding a frozen, venomous snake. She said it looked like a jagged lightning bolt, all zigs and zags. He's screaming at her in the office, gesturing wildly with this dead snake, demanding compensation in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Turns out he didn't declare them as animals, probably to get around any customs laws. There were dozens, if not hundreds of various venomous snakes in the crate. The cargo area of most planes isn't heated, so the poor snakes had frozen, literally, to death in transit. He couldn't sue and had to answer some interesting questions from the Treasury Department once all was said and done. The sucky thing is he was importing them to make anti-venom. If he'd only declared them and paid for them to be shipped correctly, he would have made a health profit and probably saved some lives. Edit, thanks everyone for the comments. We've learned anti-venom is another word for anti-venin, that modern planes have heated cargo areas, and that Samuel L. Jackson was sorely missed in a warehouse 30-odd years ago. Going to take a moment to say that you should make sure you check with your carrier if you're flying with pets, or even venomous snakes, and make sure you do it safely. As one of the commenters posted, please don't ship your wife in a box on vacation. I was cabin crew doing a turnaround from Dubai, UAE to Muscat, Oman and back again. We're on ground in Muscat and hear from ground staff to take extra care of a passenger who is about to board. She was an English lady in her 50s, as you can imagine, well turned out but unassuming all the same. But she looked completely shaken when she boarded. So what happened was, she had checked in her luggage and had gone on to security. She placed her trolley bag on the conveyor belt and she went ahead through the metal detector and was waiting on the other side for her bag. Next thing she knows, she's being detained, placed in handcuffs and taken to a room for questioning. They take in her bag and start questioning her. Airport police officer, did you pack this bag yourself? Lady, yes. Airport police, so you know what's in the bag? Lady, yes, and goes about describing what's in the bag. The questioning goes on for a while and is quite aggressive. The police officer then opens up the bag and right on top of everything is this parcel filled with marijuana. She's aghast and protests her innocence, doesn't know anything about it. This poor lady is completely distraught. The gravity of it is hitting her and she's inconsolable. Drugs trafficking anywhere is a big no-no, but in Middle Eastern countries it can end up giving you the death penalty. The officers reviewed the footage of when her bag was scanned, and when she placed her bag on the belt and turned away, a man standing right behind her, in seconds undid the zips and slipped it in. She had no idea who this man was, so she was let go and free to continue traveling, but her trolley bag was confiscated as evidence. She wasn't too worried about the bag at that stage. I got her a very big brandy. Lesson to be learned is to not let your bags out of your sight, even for a second. I work at my local airport. I live on a tiny island and this airport is smaller than our library, and just last summer we had a hurricane looming down on us. Everyone is getting packed up to evacuate. We're renting cars like crazy to people fleeing and we're trying to get them out of the storm area. I was out checking on the cars we had, and when I walked back up there was a man sitting on a bench out front, with an apocalyptic looking storm bearing down on us, wind whipping everywhere, just soulfully playing the trombone. No idea where he came from or what he was doing, but it was surreal, like something out of a David Lynch film. Edit, to clarify, this island is tiny, but it is also very close off the coast and has a bridge to the mainland. I worked at a corporate aircraft maintenance place, and we had a situation where this crazy woman somehow got out on the secured ramp area. By the time one of our line service guys saw her, she had the main entry door opened up on a Global XRS aircraft. When he pulled up, she looked at him and asked if he could help her get her bags on board. When he told her he couldn't, she told him she was going to fly the plane to China and didn't want to be late. After that occurrence, the security at our airport became insane. Worked at Perth Airport until recently. Most flights in Perth go to Bali and you see some right characters, read, Bali Bogans. A Jetstar flight was delayed by 7 hours and a woman and her husband used the time to get absolutely shit-faced. The woman fancied a cigarette and rather than go outside and go through security again, lit up in the middle of the duty-free. My colleagues quickly tried to stop her, but she told them to frick off. Cue airport police. $10,000 fine and no flight to Bali. Should have listened to the staff. My time to shine. Most of the airport work is mundane, but you will get the odd passenger that leaves an impression on you. There was a group of people coming through for a business trip and their boss had never flown before. One of his employees came in and explained they told him he needed dental records for TSA and wanted us to play along. So the boss comes in and hands me his ID and an X-ray from his dentist to check in for his flight. Trying not to laugh, I show it to my coworker who points at it and says, "Well, TSA might have an issue with that." Dude's face went white as a sheet until his employees busted up laughing. He got super red in the face and eventually started laughing at himself. Never let it be said that airports are humorless places. I used to do cargo for Delta and British Airways. We ship a lot of dead people, a lot of animals, too. They actually sent me to LA to go to a class entirely on animal handling. There's regulations and procedures for everything all the way up to elephants and whales and shit. Weirdest thing we ever got to actually ship was an alligator of some sort. Wasn't funny in any way, but this guy had to bring the ugliest dog I have ever seen to the airport and send it to his ex-wife so that she could put it down. She hated him and the dog, but she had a better lawyer. Guy was a big burly dude fighting back tears the whole time and asked if he could take him out to play with him in the grass one more time. Not me, but my father was regional manager of one of the rental car companies at the airport, and on the 11th of September, when all flights were grounded, everyone needed rental cars and it was havoc. My father said the phone rang and he almost didn't answer because he was so busy. Turns out it was the company CEO and ordered him to hand out keys free. No cost, no documentation, as the situation was severe and all other major rental companies followed suit. Not necessarily strange, funny or scary, but it is one of the few stories he told me about the job as a kid that I always remember. I used to work for TSA and intercepted a human trafficking situation. There was a guy and a lady and a little boy, but the lady wasn't allowed to speak. The little boy looked scared but didn't say anything. He wouldn't even look at me, so it freaked me out. I told my supervisor and she called the airport PD. As soon as he saw me go talk to my supervisor, he looked sort of agitated. He sent the lady and the little boy down the terminal and he was trying to grab all of their things to go meet them. The police showed up and asked me for a description. Since the airport wasn't big, he found them and brought them back to the checkpoint. As they got closer to the checkpoint, he tried to send the lady to the exit instead of having her come back to the checkpoint. Eventually, the police was able to separate the man from the lady and the little boy. She told them everything. They walked the man out in cuffs. I didn't get to see what happened to her because my shift was ending. But when I grabbed my stuff from the back, we made eye contact and she nodded at me. I took that as a thank you. It was a scary situation, but I'd do it again any day. There's no telling what would have happened to the lady and little boy if I didn't follow my instincts. Edit. Firstly, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. Second, I did not expect this to blow up like this. This happened a trick about 6 years ago. I kind of hope the lady that was involved sees this and knows I think about her often. Last year I was working as a contractor in the planning department of a large commercial airport. This airport has a park between the runways that people go to sit and watch planes. I decide to take my 2 young boys out there one evening because they like to watch the planes take off and land. It starts to get dark and I see a lady stand up and put her arms up and start making a howling sound. At first I didn't know what she was doing or where the sound was coming from. I hear it again and realize it's her and she might be a little crazy. This continues for a few minutes and I decide to leave. Meanwhile she's still standing there, arms up, howling at the planes taking off. A week or so later, I had to ride around the airport with an operations guy and I tell him about my trip to the park and what happened. He says, was there a Lufthansa Airbus leaving while she was doing that? I tell him, yeah, there was. He proceeds to tell me that she's pretty well known around there. According to him, she believes that she died on a Lufthansa flight in a previous life and has been reincarnated into her current body. She thinks her soul is still connected to the flight somehow. She goes there to pray over the same Lufthansa flight every time it departs. Edit. Just remembered that I had a video of this. You can see her stand up at 0:14, she starts singing at 0:30, and the Lufthansa flight departs shortly afterwards. Edit number 2. The amount of Redditors who have also seen this woman is surprising. It truly is a small world. TLDR, local airport has a resident crazy lady that prays over a certain flight every time it leaves. Not me, but a guy I once met. He works at the counter for a big local airline. There was a lady about mid to late 50s about to board with 4 big suitcases. This was a time when you normally could bring up to 2 suitcases or 23 kilograms. He notices this and tells the lady she would have to pay for the extra 2 suitcases. The lady nonchalantly says, "Oh, my husband is carrying those." He asks about her husband and again, completely relaxed and in a natural voice, she points at the plane and answers that's him in the coffin. After that he apologizes and let the lady board. Edit, a little bit of clarification. Edit 2.7k upvotes. Damn. I used to periodically work security to supplement my income. In 2002 I'm assigned, for the first time, to Spirit Airlines repair facility at Meacham International Airport in Fort Worth, Texas. One day I'm sitting in the guard shack with a co-worker, reading a book, when a number of Fort Worth Police Department vehicles swarm the parking lot. SWAT officers, accompanied by an impressive number of federal officers, locked the place down at gunpoint. My co-worker and I get dragged out of the guard shack, and yes, I do mean dragged, and held by law enforcement at gunpoint while they secured the facility. It turns out that Spirit hadn't been doing proper background checks on the mechanics, and a number of them were in the country illegally, using falsified documents. Many were suspected of having ties to extremist groups on the Philippines. The scuttlebutt around the office is that a C-level executive for Spirit had flown them in privately to cut payroll costs, but this was never confirmed. As if that wasn't bad enough, my co-worker and I were reprimanded for not calling our supervisory staff as soon as the raid occurred. You know, while we were being held at gunpoint. And for the doubters, edit, holy crap, apparently it's my cake day. My parents worked in airports, and told me this story that happened sometime in the late 70s. They notice a patch of purple on the marble floor near the check-in queue. Thinking someone has spilt their red wine on the floor, a cleaner comes over and clears it up. About half an hour later, there's another pool of purple. A different cleaner comes along, clears it up. Eventually the original cleaner comes back, notices the same pool he cleared up already is back. He doesn't know what's going on. He looks up, there's an air vent, dripping something. Maybe it's air conditioning coolant or something? He reports it to his supervisor. Nothing happens for a day or two, they just keep mopping up this coolant. Eventually they send an aircon tech into the roof. He comes back down the ladder, white as a sheet. It's a body. Turns out someone had tried to break past security by climbing through the air ducts. This is pre-Die Hard, remember, so quite clever. Wasn't so clever was taking a wrong turn in the dark, and falling 30 feet into a fan mechanism drop. Smoosh. Not me, but a friend. He used to work refueling planes. Most days during lunch he would sit in the airport and do some people watching. Anyway, a cart with a bunch of baggage rolls by and the bag on the end falls off without anyone noticing, but him. After some time security is notified of the unknown bag. Taking all precautions, security bring in the bomb-sniffing dog to check it out. The dog sniffs it for a second and then all of a sudden begins to dry hump the bag. This was all before 9/11. Another one, this time from my dad. We're coming off a plane at Lagos Airport, it's 1992, I'm about 10 years old, so I wander around the baggage hall, and find, in a secluded corner, a service lift, with a bloody great hole cut out of the door. It's cordoned off so you can't use it. I ask my dad about it. A cleaner had been using the service lift one night after a shift to go back up to the departure area, where he could stash his trolley etc. Lift breaks down between floors. The emergency help button does nothing. This is Nigeria, remember, and of course it's way before mobile phones were even introduced. He pounds and pounds on the interior of the lift, but it's in a quiet bit of the airport, where no one goes. He's not scheduled to be on shift the next day. His colleagues come in and assume the trolley has been stolen as the cupboard is open, and it's not there. They carry on. When they try to use the service lift, it doesn't work. They don't hear their colleague, as he's trapped closer to the floor below than the one above. Trapped cleaner has now been in there 18 hours or so. He's desperate. He drinks the water from the mop bucket, still pounding on the lift, hoping someone will come. 24 hours pass. His family come to the airport to find out where he is. Their village has no telephone. At least, not one that works. Colleagues haven't seen him. Maybe he's gone into the city to spend his paycheck, given to him that morning? Eventually, it's been nearly 48 hours. Trapped man is feeling sick from drinking mop bucket water. He's had to use another bucket as a toilet. The smell is unbearable. A technician arrives to try to fix the broken lift. He's saved. Or not. The tech manages to get the lift back down to the ground floor, but the doors won't open. They try prying, jimmying, nothing's budging them. They even removed the motors and tried by hand. Eventually, they realize they'll have to cut him out. So they fire up the angle grinder, and cut a 2-foot by 2-foot hole in the door. Sparks flying everywhere. That's just the outer skin. They can't get the angle grinder in further to the inner door. Welding torch comes out, gas axe or whatever you want to call it. Of course, this is flinging hot metal into the lift. The cleaner is absolutely scared shitless. He's been in the dark for 48 hours and now someone is flinging hot metal at him. Eventually they make a hole all the way through. He crawls out, collapses, and is taken away in an ambulance. He survived, but does not return to his job at the airport. The broken lift was still there until we left in 1995. When I returned on business in 2001, it had been repaired. I still think about the poor guy whenever I get in a lift.